Good morning. My name is Glenn Hoxie. I'm moderator of Pilgrim Congregational Church in Reading. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And we mean it. All of you, the mess and the beauty. You could have joined any number of church services this morning, and maybe you will, but we are grateful you chose to spend some time with us. Today we have several folks from our congregation lighting candles, reading in scriptures, and singing. Our guest homilist this morning is our old friend, Reverend Ellis Martin. Some announcements. Pastor Allen is on vacation until August 20th, a well-deserved break. We wish him the best inspiration and peace on his time away. Book Club is finishing Inspired on August 20th. We'd like to remind you there's coffee hour every morning via Zoom at 10:30. Just use the link that came with this service. The ladies' luncheon is August 14th on Zoom. And now for the lighting of the candles.
For those we miss. For Beirut. And for our church family.
Hello everybody, we're playing you a song titled What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding.
We think it's going to go really well with Pastor Ellis's message for the day, and we hope you all enjoy it. 2, 3.
As I walk through this wicked world, searching for light in the darkness of insanity, I ask myself, is all hope lost? Is there only pain and hatred and misery? And each time I feel like this inside, there's just one thing I want to know. What's so funny about peace, love, and understanding? Oh,
Good morning, Pilgrim kids. This is our last Sunday before school starts, and that's going to look a little bit differently for each and every one of us. Some of us are going to school regularly, some of us are going to school hybrid, some of us are staying on distance learning. Everybody's situation looks a little bit different right now. I came across this story, and some of you might be familiar with other books by this author. This one is called The Cool Bean by Jory John and Pete Oswald. Watch out! Here come the cool beans. The cool beans. Oh yeah, check out how they move. Look at the way they swagger. Notice their sunglasses. Yow! The cool beans are known all over school, from house to house, across town, beyond county lines. Some of you might know some kids at school like that. In the olden days, last year, we were all one big pot of beans. We were a mixed bag, and somehow it worked. Yep, those were the good old days. And then we stopped seeing each other as much. That's just how it is sometimes. You spend less time together, even though you're not totally sure why. I watched as the beans I knew so well, the beans from my own pod, became the cool beans. Oh, they were so cool. One of them could play the guitar, one of them could draw the best superheroes, one of them could jump higher than any bean I'd ever known. It's pretty cool. Me, well, I mostly stayed the same. Sure, I made some small changes. I wore sunglasses, I slicked my hair back, I strutted around, I swaggered. I was still picked last for everything. My clothes never seemed to fit. I snorted when I laughed. I walked into stuff. I was an uncool bean for sure. I started thinking of myself as just a common bean with no special skills. I couldn't compete, so I didn't even try. I'd never be a cool bean. It seemed like there were two types of beans in the world. There were the cool beans and the beans like me. The days all blended together. I lived my life and things were just okay. I took tests and ate lunches and mostly kept to myself. The cool beans continued being cool. I mean, sure, I miss them a bit, but it's not like I was going to say anything. I felt like all that coolness had gotten in the way of our friendship. And that's how it went. Until one day. I was in the cafeteria. I dropped my lunch on my loafers. But then something sort of miraculous happened. Out of nowhere, one of the cool beans helped me clean it up. He didn't even say anything. He just gave me a nod. That was it. Later, I was out on the playground. I tripped and scraped my knee and maybe cried a little bit, and everybody saw it. Another one of the cool beans came to my side, and without a word, he dusted me off. That afternoon, I was sitting in class. I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't notice, but our teacher had called on me. Everybody stared. I sat there in silence. Nobody said anything. And then everybody just laughed at me. That was it. After today, I was officially a has-been. But then one of the cool beans stood up and came over to me. Everybody watched. She leaned in close and whispered, "Hey, the teacher asked you to read from page 32. And she gave me a quick wink and went back to her seat. It was a small gesture, sure, but it was also everything. I walked home with a goofy smile on my face. I smiled all the way through dinner. That day made all the difference. It was a day that could have been really bad, if not for the kindness of a few cool beans. It gave me a shred of confidence. That shred of confidence has continued to grow. Somebody had my back, or a few somebodies. After that, I started hanging out with the cool beans again. Not all the time, but sometimes. At lunch, after school, even on the weekends. Throughout all of this, I realized that it's not about how you look or any of that other silly stuff. It's about a wink or a nod or a smile at just the right moment. It's about dusting somebody off, helping them up again, and pointing them in the right direction. Now that's cool. As you go forward next week, regardless of what school looks like, remember to be that cool bean, the one that offers encouragement and friendship and kindness. Help out your friends at school. Help out the kids who aren't your friends yet, because they're probably cool beans too. And have a wonderful first week of school. I miss you all so much. Have a great week.
John 1, 1 through 5. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him was not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. In John 1, 1 through 5, we have two verses that I think are extremely important. The first one is the first verse. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But the last verse also is important. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Now I am fully aware that traditionally, John 1 through 5 is used to portray Jesus as the Word, that Jesus was in existence in the very beginning, and that Jesus is God. I'm going to discard all of that theological positioning. I'm not going to step into it, but I'm going to take a new look at verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That word is a translation of the Greek word logos. And the Greek word basically means ground, plea, opinion, expectation, word, speech, account, reason, proportion, and discourse. It's one of those words for which we have no equivalent word in English. Our English word, has a much narrower meaning than the Greek word logos. And so I think we need to look at this in the sense of the Greek word, logos, which basically I would translate as communication. In the very beginning, God gave the human race the ability to communicate. That places upon us a tremendous responsibility, because if communication is the Word, and if communication is God's Word, then when we communicate, we are communicating for God. This is a tremendous responsibility. And our society cannot function, and we cannot function as individuals, as families, as congregations, as a society, without adequate communication. All we have to do is look at the mess that we're in right now, and the tremendous conflicts that are not being resolved, to realize that we're really not communicating with each other. But you and I, as men and women of faith, our communication should represent God. We are responsible for the way that we function. But as we think about ourselves as individuals, a number of years ago, when Heather was pastor in our congregation, in our Bible study, she gave us an assignment. She said, I want you to go home this week and I want you to make a list of all the saints that have been involved in your life? Well, that was quite a shocker for me. I went home and I worked on it faithfully all week. I couldn't list all of the people that have had an influence on my life, and even today as I think about that, every once in a while I'll think about someone who influenced me that I had forgotten about. What we are today is a result of the influence of all these many people that have talked to us, that have worked with us, that we have known. Because they have represented God in speaking to us and helping us change our lives. And that is our function. We don't always realize how many people are listening and how many people we actually influence. A number of years ago when I was pastor in Columbia Falls, Montana, I took a youth group from our region to a regional youth group in Great Falls. It was during the Cuban Missile Crisis when Russia had placed missiles in Cuba and the controversy that was going on. And as the kids began talking about this, they were really upset and really worried. And I discussed it with them, talked to them about it. And after it was all over with, I had forgotten it. But a number of years later, when I attended a convention in Portland, Oregon, I was walking down the aisle, going down to meet somebody, and a young woman came up and threw her arms around me and said, "Oh, Ellis, it's so good to see you." And I kind of stepped back a little bit. She looked at me and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No." "Do you remember that trip to Great Falls, Montana with a youth group?" I said, "Yeah, I remember that." "Well, I was in the car. My name was," and she gave me her maiden name. Then I remembered her family. But she said, "I have always remembered the way in which you talked to us about the missile crisis and how we needed to respond to it. It really was helpful to me in trying to deal with that crisis at that particular time." I didn't realize the influence I was having. But what I was trying to do was help that group of young people deal with a current problem that they were facing. This is our task as men and women of faith, because every day we face a new problem as an individual, as a family, as a neighborhood, as a city, as a state, as a government. And we never know what's going to be happening next. Right now we're in the midst of a pandemic, and many people are getting sick. It's a tremendous problem. And you and I are responsible for the way in which we respond and for the way in which we reach out to each other, because we are representing God. There are many people out there. The only God they know is us. Thus, we have a responsibility that we may not want, but God has given to us. And therefore, we have to be very careful how we talk, what we say, what our attitude is, how we respond to people that are having problems. And because we have a tremendous influence on them. The way we respond to our friends, to our family, and even to enemies can create either a heaven or a hell. Do you know anybody that's in a living hell right now? They are probably there because the influence that people have had upon their lives. I remember when I was working for the welfare department, I had a family on my caseload where the mother had been totally destroyed by her husband. He was abusive physically, but primarily verbally. And he had totally destroyed her personality. She couldn't take care of her children. When I would go to visit the house, you couldn't set a pan down in the kitchen without killing a cockroach in the daytime. There were dog feces all over. When I looked at the groceries, it was pretty obvious that the kids were pretty much feeding themselves. And the youngest girl had just gone into the 7th grade, starting junior high. And the kids were making fun of her because she smelled. She never took a bath. And I realized that something had to be done. These children needed to be taken care of because she wasn't sending them to school properly. She wasn't taking care of their health. She wasn't feeding them properly. She was just practically a nothing. So I removed the children from her care. A drastic thing to do. But when she was left without any resources, she turned herself around. She got involved in a program to stop her drinking. She went to work for the Opportunity Center at the Welfare Department. She began going into training so she could get a better job. She finally got a good job, and ultimately she came back and got her children back and was able to have a constructive family. Her former husband placed her in a living hell by his words and his actions. We need to be careful. I know individuals that feel that they just can't do anything right, primarily because as they were growing up as children, their parents would try to correct them and say, look, can't you do anything right? You always have to do everything wrong, and they bought into it. So we not only have to use our words appropriately in talking to other people, but we also have to listen appropriately to what other people say to us. Do not take their opinions personally. That way you can listen to someone that disagrees if you are not assuming that that person is trying to talk to you. Now, they may be trying to do that, but you do not have to take what they say personally. If you make a mistake, and somebody comes along and says, you always do things wrong, don't buy into it. Nobody always does everything wrong. We have to resist accepting the comments and the descriptions of other people, so that when we sit down and we talk about problems, we're not talking about a personal thing. We're talking about a possibility of being able to solve the problem, a possibility of being able to improve the situation. Because as we read in the fifth verse of John 1, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. You and I are the light that shines in the darkness today. One of the other problems that we often have is we make too many assumptions. An assumption is not based on fact, it's not based on reality. We see a series of things and then we assume that we know what the answer is. 9 times out of 10, our assumption is wrong. So we need to listen carefully to everything that we read, everything that we hear, and in our conversation with friends and family, or if it's a political discussion. We dare not make assumptions that any particular thing is true, but we need to look at every aspect of solving the problems that are around us, because we don't always know the answer. But the primary responsibility that we have as an individual, as a man or a woman of faith, is to always do our best. Jesus not only said, you are the light of the world, he also said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. You see, it's the attitude that we carry into our life. It's the way we live our life in relationship to other people. And our goal is to be a light in the world, as Jesus said. And by doing this, then the 5th verse of 1 John will come true in our lives and in our community. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it. You and I are the light to the world today. Amen.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are going to sing for you a very, very old and familiar hymn, Joyful, Joyful. Joyful, joyful, we adore you, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before you, opening to the sun above.
Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day.
All your works with joy surround you, earth and heaven reflect your rays. Stars and angels sing around you, center of unbroken praise.
Field and forest, vale and mountain, flowery meadow and flashing sea.
Chanting bird and flowing fountain,
Praising
you eternally. Always giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed. Wellspring of the joy of living, ocean depth of happy rest.
loving Father, Christ our brother, let your light upon us shine.
Teach us how to love each other, lift us to the joy divine. Teach us how to love each other, lift us to the joy divine.
As we leave our service of worship this morning, let's remember that truth and honesty and persistence is the light that will solve all the problems in the world. As we leave this morning, turn on the light. Amen.
All right, everybody, let's close and sing together. God be with you. God be with you. God be with you. God be with you till we meet again. Oh, God be with you. God be with you. God be with you till we meet again. Have a great week.